How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and we are doing another
Lost Heroes of the Golden
Age. Yes, this is Lost Heroes of the Golden Age, and this time we are going to be doing
the all-powerful, the almighty Samson.
Yes, we are doing
another superhuman-powered superhero.
Yes, it's another super strong superhero.
The Golden Age has enough of those.
In the way that the Golden Age comic books worked, most of these heroes were self-contained to their own universe, so there weren't a whole lot of superpowered superheroes. I mean, these guys existed in their own world where they were the only superhero. I mean, you may have had crossovers every now and again, but it didn't happen very often. So they were the only superhero. That's why there wasn't other ones to rely on.
Why are we doing the almighty Samson?
Why are we doing Samson? You mean, despite the fact that when he came out, he was very popular. He was done by Will Eisner. He's from the Bible, and he has a pretty good storyline in Project Superpowers?
Yes, despite those facts.
It's a request. And we have a requester who wanted to see it.
Well, in that case, let's do this.
Yes, Samson did have a brief spike in popularity when he came out, and in his height of the popularity, he was appearing on 3 comic books simultaneously. And I discussed this in the comic book. There wasn't a precipitous decline in the quality of the comics or in his popularity. It just kind of stopped. There wasn't any rhyme or reason to it. I haven't found a reason why Samson. I haven't found a reason why Samson declined. It just stopped after a couple of years. Okay, well, let's cover. We're going to cover a bit of the progression of the comic books. We'll cover his first appearance. They actually give an origin story, but here's the funny thing: the origin story did not appear even in the first few issues, and the origin story didn't even appear in the storyline that Samson first started in. They created a whole nother comic which was titled after him, and that's where the origin story would appear. And it was pretty quick. They didn't go on it very, very long. So we do go over the origin. And we are also going to highlight his appearance in Project Superpowers. And I love the way he just comes in. I mean, you don't see it coming. And then when he just reveals who he is, I'm just like, that's awesome. So let's go ahead and cover the mighty Samson. And this...
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
Yes, Lost Heroes of the Golden Age. Let's do this. Samson, real name, Samson, first appeared in Fantastic Comics #1 in 1939. The original publication is Fox, and he was created by Will Eisner and Alec Blum. Now, Samson would not only appear in Fantastic Comics, he would appear in Big 3 and Samson Comics. He would have his own self-titled one. Now, his self-titled comic would only last 6 issues, and after they discontinued that, it would change into another feature, which I think was Captain Arrow. So Captain Arrow would take over the Samson comic. Now, Big 3 only ran for 7 issues, and Samson was in the first 6. He was actually one of the prominent features in Big 3, appearing on the cover issues. Now, since Blue Beetle was also part of Big 3, the Blue Beetle would take the featured story. Now, in the Samus comics, obviously Salmon would be the featured story. And in the Fantastic Comics, he was not only the featured cover, he was also the featured story. Now, what was interesting about the comics, and I noticed this, is I'm wondering if the stories might have been printed out of order than what they were made in, because a lot of the stories that appeared on the covers, he actually did in the issue, but not the issue that the cover was on. Like in one of the covers, they show Samson fighting robots, but he didn't fight robots on that issue. But in another issue, he did fight robots. And in one issue, they show him saving some boats in the water, and in another cover, they showed him on the cover rescuing boats, but the one where rescuing boats on the cover and the story are not the same issue, which was actually kind of funny. So what was appearing on the cover were adventures that he was doing, but not in the proper context. So it was kind of weird. It's like, okay, here's the covers. It was almost like a match game. Okay, this is what Samus is doing on the cover, so let's find out which Fantastic Comics he's doing the adventure in. Now, they did give him an origin story, but not when he first appeared. Now, I did cover the first issue that Samson appeared in before I did this intro video, so I'm questioning the dictation that he is greeted in his first appearance. They say that Samson does have the incredible strength like his ancestors before him, his forebears. And I'm like, well, who's the forebears? Isn't Samson supposed to be Samson? Well, no. This Samson is not the original biblical Samson, but he is an ancestor of the Samson. This Samson appeared in the 1940s, and he is part of the bloodline of the original Samson, even though he is not the original Samson. Apparently, when he was growing up in a small town, he was able to show that he did have strength around the time it says he reached college age, and then his mother revealed his ancestry to him, and then he saw a holy man who was crying out for help, and Samson did go and help him, and the holy man told him that he would have a young person teaming up with him named David. Now, Samson already teamed up with David before the issue of Samson #1 came out, so it wasn't foretelling, it was recapping something he had already done. Now, Samson would team up with a young orphan who, as far as we know, was not named David, but he would call him David. And I don't know if that was just being biblical or whatever, but he said, your name is David now. Now, David would appear in a lot of the Samus comics afterwards, but not all of them, but most of them. And he was doing what the typical sidekick would do. He was there so Samson would have someone to talk to, so Samson didn't look like he was crazy, someone he could constantly rescue. David wasn't totally incompetent. Sometimes he could help Samus in his adventures, but Samson really didn't need help. Now, I don't know why his popularity waned. When he first appeared on, Samson was one of the most popular characters they had at the time. It says that he was one of the most successful early heroes. And that's why in 1940 there were 3 comics being printed at one time with Samson. But we don't know why he started, the popularity started waning. Now, this would not be the only Samson that came out in the Golden Age. There was a story of Samson and Delilah. There's a full comic, and it basically just did the run through of Samson's story in the Bible, which that Samson and Delilah would actually cover the original biblical Samson, not the one from Fox. And he would also have 3 brief appearances in the Kid Eternity storylines, where we know the story of Kid Eternity. I covered that with Hercules. Now, after he was done with the, was it 1942 is where he stopped. He started in 1939, ended in 1942, where he was replaced on Big 3, and they stopped making Fantastic Comics. Well, no, they actually started making Fantastic Comics in 1941. In 1942, January 1942 is when he was dropped from Big 3. So I don't know why he would just suddenly fall out of popularity. Now, in 1955, Samus was revived by Gold Key Comics. And Gold Key had done some Mighty Samus, and Hanna-Barbera would do Young Samus. So that they did some stories of him, and then he would become part of AC Comics' Fenforce lineup. I don't know how long that lasted. I mean, as we know, a lot of the Golden Age heroes that I've covered have ended up in AC Comics. Now, I believe, and they've said this in the Wikipedia, that the Samus that appears in the Fox feature is the same Samus that appeared in Project Superpowers, but the way Samus talks about himself and refers to himself in those comics as being touched by God and having the godly powers would suggest that the Samus in Project Superpowers was the biblical Samus. So, Samson. Why am I keep saying Samus? Samson. So, I don't know which one in Project Superpowers it actually is. I did cover the Project Superpowers, and it would seem more like it was the biblical Samson that appeared on the pages, but the way he acts and fights and introduces himself, he seems more like the Fox feature. Now, the Golden Age comics are not always the direct reference to the ones that appear in Project Superpowers. So it sounds like the one in Project Superpowers is more of an amalgamation of the Golden Age and the biblical version. Now, like I said, since they're not direct rips of them, it could be one or the other. But they say that he's the one from Fox, but the way he talks about being touched by God and having the strength of God sounds like he is more of the original Samson. Now, he did like to answer the prayers of people that seemed to be praying for a miracle from God. And he said that he was going to be the champion of evil and injustice. Now, I think he did have a sense of super speed, but that might have just been in part to his strength. And he did seem to be being able to leap an incredible distance, which also may have just been part of his strength. I don't know what the upward levels of his strength were. They did seem to be unparalleled. He is lifting giant tanks, trains, and at one point he lifts up a dinosaur, so we don't know where his upward levels of his strength actually were. Now, in the first issue of Samson, they do give his origin story, which was a new story. Now, after that, there were a couple of more printed stories in his own comic, It wasn't just his comic, some other people appeared there too. But he did have the reprint of some of his appearance in Fantastic Comics in that issue of Samson #1. Now, I believe the other issues and the ones in Big 3, I believe those were all separate stories and not reprints of Fantastic Comics. Even though in some of the stories in the Samson comics it says he appears in more tales of Fantastic Comics and #3. Even in the last issue of Fantastic Comics, it says that Samson would appear in more issues of Fantastic Comics. His popularity came up. He was very popular. Don't know what led to him not being as popular. It might have been the fact that he was just wearing what appeared to be leather trunks. No gloves, no boots, no capes, no hats, just the leather trunks. Occasionally he was shown wearing more, like with an overcoat, but he appeared in trunks, and David would appear in trunks as well, which, I mean, they're trying to go as biblical as they can, but it just, in some cases, it did not look right. So, that pretty much covers all of Samson. That, I mean, you've seen the pictures. I'm showing you his strength and his stories. They did seem to like him pushing pillars over to knock buildings down, which is probably his most famous bibliological reference, as when he thought to be sapped of strength, God gave him the powers to push the pillars over to knock the big building down. They seem to like doing that. One thing, the Samson was not completely invulnerable. They did capture him in a steel net and cut his hair. It did seem to reduce his strength, but his hair did grow back, probably a rate that was faster than it should have, and he was able to get his strength back. So he did have one weakness, was his hair being cut, but I don't think that they harped on that very well, or very much at all. But like I said, you've seen the pictures, so you've seen what he is capable of. That's pretty much what he did. He helped fight injustice, whether it be the Japanese, the Nazis, regular people just committing crimes, or needing to fight the wildlife itself. He went all over the country. He didn't fight just America. He fought everywhere. So I don't know why. I don't know what caused the sudden spike in popularity. I don't know why he had the sudden decline and stopped appearing after #42. Because really, people stopped becoming interested in superheroes a little bit later than 1942. So a sudden decline, I can't speak for why. But let's cover the first appearance and his appearance in Project Superpowers. I love the introduction in Project Superpowers, and I do emphasize that. So let's cover those, and then you'll know a little more about Samson. Oh, one last thing before I get started. I did say that he wasn't wearing any footwear. Occasionally he didn't, but he did have strapped sandals on at first, and later it looked like it became boots. But other than that, no other clothing. Out of the midst of history comes the mighty Samson. Like his ancient forebears, Samson pits his tremendous strength against the forces of evil and injustice. Forebears? Who came with tremendous strength before Samson? I believe he was the first. Who would his forebears be? I mean, they just said they said forebears, which means that they're talking about people with tremendous strength that came before Samson. I don't remember any. Okay. For years, peace reigned in Europe. Suddenly, a vast, weirdly equipped army files out of the barren Tibetan pass. Swiftly they move westward, a fearful, devastating force descending on Europe, directed by the brilliant, mad, Thorga. I believe that's how his name is pronounced. Exiled from Western society because of his mad plans, Thorga's twisted mind bends its energy and schemes of world conquest. Thorga's works laboriously at his many machines. 1 cubic inch of the solution will destroy an entire city. Good Lord, what do you have in there? Oh, 1 cubic inch is small, and he says that this thing can destroy an entire city. Jesus. Okay, we see him working with his machine, and he has this giant television screen that lets him look in on the devastation. Let's see. Keeps in touch with the generals by a high-frequency thought transmitter. Okay. I don't know how it... never mind. Okay, so we see the planes destroying the city. We see his army slaughtering people. And then, great heavens, who is that man? He'll ruin my plans. And we find out that it is Samson. With horror and amazement, Thorga watches this yellow-haired giant destroy a whole battalion of Thorginians? Okay, single-handedly. And, we know it's Samson because it's his comic. He starts to decimate the army. And knowing Samson's tremendous strength and the fact that he's punching these people in the face, I think that these men are dead. Now, that wouldn't actually be unusual for Samson in the comic, in his stories, because back in the biblical stories, when he was fighting the invading people in his lands, he killed many, many people. I think it was up to 1,000, if not more. Who is this demon? I must stop him at once. Nah, he ain't no demon. So we see him releasing these planes from a triple stacked hangar, and you don't do something like that. The risk of a catastrophic accident happening in a triple wide hangar like that. And then he also releases these tanks. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, if it wasn't for you, Samson, we would have been completely wiped out. It's a fight against evil. I'm only doing my duty. Thorga must be destroyed. So somehow he knows that Thorga is behind this. Okay. We see a tank over the horizon. Samson laughs and rushes forward, dodging flying bullets. Does he need to dodge bullets? Somebody of his tremendous strength, wouldn't he be bulletproof? Okay, so he picks it up and he says he eases this effortlessly. This thing has got to weigh in the tons. This thing's got to be enormously heavy, and he says he effortlessly lifts this. Okay, and then we see the planes descend upon him, and let's see, the one dives low, ready to drop a bomb, and Samson leaps high, grasps the wheels, and pulls the plane out of the air. Yes, he pulled it out of the air and destroys it. And I would have thought that the pilot was dead, but it says miraculously one of the enemy pilot crawls from the wreckage and escapes. There's only one. Well, I think we're trying to show that he doesn't kill people, but no. He will before the end of this comic. I already read it. Okay, now he starts to... Well, he's dispatched the armies, and he's going to go ahead and take on Thorga. So he comes up to his compound, and he sneaks up on one guard, and it says, strangling him in his powerful arms, Samson stops the other one with a mighty kick, thereby leaving his way clear. Okay, he just kicked this guy in the sternum. Or in the that's broken bones, and he says, leaving the stunned sentries behind, he marches straight to the forest. No, you killed them. They're dead. Okay, He rips this powerful door off and starts to descend into the compound. He enters the hall and confronts the astounded generals fiercely. And this is the end of your diabolical schemes, Thorga. So Thorga runs off, and he's trying to say, we're not through yet. So he goes behind the door, and Samson effortlessly knocks the door over. With a wild leap, he springs upon the nearest man, tearing the life from his throat. Yes, he did actually kill him. It says he tore the life from his throat. So he's dispatching everybody in this room, and he lifts the screaming Thorga and dashes him violently to the ground. Yeah, he's dead. He says, now to destroy this place of evil. And if you've ever seen the Bible story where he pushes the columns over to topple the building, he recreates the scene here as you see him pushing two pillars that are conveniently close enough for him to do that. He pushes them over, and the compound drops and kills everybody inside. Yeah. And then he finds a bomb from the arsenal, and then he heads, and he hears movement behind him. A band of Thorga's surviving army comes towards him, and he throws the heavy bomb at them. They even said he did that. So he just killed, oh my God, I don't even know how many people he killed with this. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're the big man on campus. The leaderless army, completely demoralized and hopelessly beaten, surrenders, and they want Samson to be the leader of their armies, and he's like, look, I can't, I helped you out here, but I need to be moving on. Turning his broad and powerful back on the grateful army, Samson walks into the settling sun to carry on his lone battle with the evil forces. Now, it doesn't say that he will return in any more issues of Fantastic Comics, but he does. He does return in the next issue. In fact, he's in all 23 issues of this comic, and the feats of strength that he accomplishes is just amazing. And in one issue, they show him picking up and throwing a long-necked dinosaur. I don't think it was a full-grown long-neck, but he does it. Yeah, as I explained earlier, he has tremendous strength. Now, he doesn't get blinded in any of these comics, but if you have read the Project Superpowers, he is wearing bandages. So let's go ahead and cover the Project Superpowers, a little bit about his arc into the story. He is a pretty important part of his story. Now, the reason I specified that is there are many different storylines going on at one time, and there's a lot of people who are important to their stories. Now, he is important to his story. So let's go on and focus a little bit about that. And I think they also say why he is blind, which it goes more along with him biblically, because he was blinded in his stories. So him being blinded and wearing the bandages is, more in line with who he is. So let's cover Project Superpowers. Now, one of the things I love about Project Superpowers is not one hero dominates the entire story. There are a number of different story arcs involved in this, and each hero that they're focusing on has his chance to shine in his particular set where he is needed before we switch focus and get on to another hero. Now, some of the heroes are more important than the others, but Samson does have a pretty significant role to play for his part in Project Superpowers. Now, the introduction to him on the battlefield is awesome, When he first takes the field, you think that he is just some blind hermit or a prophet that has just joined the battlefield, and then he proclaims who his name is. He says, "I cannot be hit by bullets. I have no fear of bombs or death or betrayal. All these things have happened to me. I am beyond that now. You may have heard of me with this awesome display," and yells out, "My name is Samson." Now, as we come to find in the story, there's a one part where we saw that bullets that were aimed at him actually veer off path. He is showing that he is extremely powerful. He cannot be harmed. Nothing is actually able to stop him at all. We go back to his past, and we're trying to explain why he is blind, because since nothing can hurt him or harm him, he shouldn't be able to have his sight taken away. But the fact that he doesn't seem to have sight doesn't seem to stop him. We go back in time and find out that he was actually battling with some superheroes at Nagasaki, and even though they stopped the enemies, the U.S. still decided to drop the bomb. So I don't think he can fly. It was never really stated, but he either flies or has this ability to leap high into the air. He was going to dismantle the bomb, and it exploded in the sky right in front of him. Now, it seems like they were suggesting that the bomb damaged his eyesight, but he said that's not the way it was. He said, "My eyes have seen the glory." And he's explaining this to Scarab, and Scarab looks at where his eyes are. He says, "I don't understand. I can't see anything there." And he says, "And you will not be able to, not until you become like me." So they're being very vague about his lack of eyesight. Now, later on in the story, there is this army that is a patchwork army done by the Dynamic family. They're basically an army of patchwork soldiers that have the inability to die, and if they lose any body parts, can have new body parts grafted on them. And I think they were called the F Troop. I give you the F Troop. And Samson is appalled by the F Troop. He says, the death of many souls that live on, and he wants to release these souls. He can sense that this is unnatural because he can't directly see it. I actually love this scene where he walks into a tent. In the background, you can see the Flame and Hydro on the television, because their story is actually happening at the same time that this is happening. That's a nice little thing. I didn't notice that until now. So Samson and Scarab just start taking apart the F Troop, with Samson's attempt to release the souls that have been trapped on the earth in these bodies. Now, later on, the army would be destroyed. Samson and the Scarab have a large part in bringing it to that. V-Man is actually responsible for the ultimate end of the army. Now, Samson would get regulated mainly to being a background character after this, until we start investigating the return of Captain Future. Now, Samson meets Captain Future head on, and he is actually damaged in the chest and is near death by the power of Captain Future. And there's a lot of speculation about trying to figure out how this happened, because Samson, incredible strength, massive durability, shouldn't be able to be harmed or killed by anybody but God. And then we find out that Captain Future is actually Zeus in the human form power. Now, I don't know if this is... I don't know the whole entire thing about this. I don't know if it was just Zeus in Captain Future's body, or if he took over Captain Future's body, but we find out that he is Zeus, and when Samson goes to battle him again, he blows a hole through Samson's chest and essentially kills him. Now, later we will find that Samson is back from the death. He is back from... He rises from dead, basically. And he starts having a conversation with the Green Llama about how he was able to come back. Now, this is the last major thing that will happen with Samson. He has a talk with the Green Llama. He's talking about how it appears that him and the target... or him, Samson, and Target are essentially, I guess, he's saying himself as immortal. Samson says, I wasn't trapped in the urn, and neither was I, but you claim to have been touched by God. It is not mere claim. He's like, I didn't mean to offend. What I mean is that you are also touched by a being beyond the metanatural world, and could possibly explain Samson's resurrection, because God is beyond all of us, and since only God is able to end Samson, as he has stated many times, the power of Zeus, being a god, may have been able to take him down, but ultimately would not be able to extinguish his life. Now, this would be the last time that he had any major pivotal role. He does have a couple of more speaking lines in the movie, or in the story. He doesn't encounter Zeus again, but he does join the battle at the end when all the heroes are taking on the Claw, who has fused with a number of bodies and is giant size now. And ultimately it is Daredevil, not the Marvel Daredevil, the Golden Age Daredevil. If you know who that is, then you know who that is. Who ultimately is responsible for taking the Claw down. And then I guess Samson goes back on to wandering the lands, which he was doing before the story started. Because he had been quiet for many years up until this point, because they state that Samson has returned. So, I don't know where he had been in the time between Nagasaki to when the story would take place. But I guess he goes back to wandering that path again. And that is his Project Superpowers. Okay, I hope you liked this video. I hope that you have been enjoying these... I wouldn't call it meta-natural kind of mythos characters that we've been doing so far with Hercules, Thor, and with the mighty Samson. I actually have one more of these type of characters coming up, and it's interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you come back for more, and like and subscribe, tell your friends. Until next time, I'll be seeing you.